Apple's next iPhone lineup could look very different from anything we've seen before. We're talking about a new iPhone 18 Pro, a massive iPhone 18 Pro Max, and Apple's first ever foldable iPhone, potentially called the iPhone Ultra. And here's the crazy part. Apple may not even launch the entire iPhone 18 family at the same time. So in this video, I'm going to break down everything we know so far: the design, displays, cameras, chips, batteries, colors, prices, launch strategy, and of course, that mysterious foldable iPhone Ultra. But remember, these are leaks and reports, not official Apple specifications. Let's get into it. Biggest change: Apple's new launch strategy. For years, Apple has followed a pretty predictable formula. New iPhones arrive around September, and you get the standard model, the Pro, and the Pro Max around the same time. But that could change with the iPhone 18 generation. Current reporting suggests Apple plans to launch the iPhone 18 Pro, iPhone 18 Pro Max, and its first foldable iPhone in fall 2026. Meanwhile, the standard iPhone 18 and potentially the iPhone Air 2 are expected to arrive in spring 2027. And this isn't just based on one random leak anymore. Reports around Apple's supply chain, including comments attributed to Pegatron executives, have added credibility to the idea that the standard iPhone 18 is being pushed into 2027. So basically, Apple could be creating two iPhone seasons: Pro season in the fall, and standard iPhone season in the spring. Honestly, that's a pretty big change. iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max performance. Let's start with the iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max. The biggest upgrade underneath the hood is expected to be Apple's next generation A20 Pro chip. The chip is widely rumored to use a 2-nanometer manufacturing process, which could bring improvements to performance, efficiency, and power consumption. And that matters because Apple isn't just competing on benchmark numbers anymore. AI is becoming a much bigger part of smartphones. So the extra performance could be used for things like on-device AI, photography, video processing, gaming, and Apple's expanding intelligence features. The Pro Max is also expected to receive additional memory and efficiency improvements. But here's something I want to emphasize. Don't believe every A20 Pro destroys everything headline you see. Until Apple actually announces the chip and we see real-world benchmarks, we simply don't know how big the performance jump will be. The more interesting question is how Apple uses that extra performance. Because a faster chip is nice, but a faster chip that gives you better battery life, better cameras, and more powerful AI. That's where things get really interesting. Camera changes. Now let's talk about cameras. This is potentially one of the biggest upgrades coming to the iPhone 18 Pro models. One of the most talked about rumors is a variable aperture main camera. And if you've never used a camera with a variable aperture, here's the simple explanation. The aperture controls how much light enters the camera. So instead of the camera relying on one fixed opening, Apple could allow the lens to physically adjust depending on the situation. That could potentially improve low-light photography, depth of field control, and give photographers more flexibility. The Pro models are also expected to receive continued camera sensor improvements and better computational photography. And of course, Apple is likely to push video even further. Because let's be honest, the iPhone is already one of the most popular phones for creators. For NOSEYGEEK viewers who care about cameras, this could actually be one of the reasons to upgrade. But again, variable aperture is still a rumor until Apple confirms it. Display and dynamic island. Now we get to the front of the phone. The iPhone 18 Pro Max is expected to retain a large display, with reports pointing toward a roughly 6.9-inch screen. But the interesting part isn't just the size. It's the possibility of a smaller dynamic island. There have even been reports about under-display Face ID. However, this is one area where the rumor situation is messy. Some reports suggest Apple is working toward hiding more of the Face ID hardware beneath the display, while other reporting suggests we shouldn't expect a completely invisible system yet. So I wouldn't tell you. Yes, the dynamic island is completely gone. That's too confident. The safer prediction is that Apple is working toward reducing the visible hardware footprint. And if Apple eventually manages to put Face ID completely under the display, that could be one of the biggest visual changes to the iPhone since the iPhone X. The battery could be massive. Now here's something that could matter more in everyday use than almost anything else. Battery life. Recent reports have pointed toward a larger battery for the iPhone 18 Pro Max. One reported Chinese regulatory database listing claimed a US ESIM-only version could have a battery around 5,567 mAh, while a Chinese model with a physical SIM tray could reportedly be around 5,391 mAh. If those figures are accurate, that's a significant increase. But remember, regulatory listings and leaked capacities don't automatically tell us real-world battery life. Apple could use the extra capacity to make the phone last longer, or use some of that capacity to power a brighter display, more powerful cameras, and heavier AI workloads. Personally, I'd love to see Apple focus on all-day plus battery life, rather than simply making the phone more powerful. The iPhone Ultra. And now we get to the device everyone's talking about. The foldable iPhone Ultra. Apple's first foldable iPhone is expected to use a book-style, passport-like design, similar to the general shape we've already seen from other foldables. Reports point toward an internal display around 7.7 to 7.8 inches, with an external display around 5.4 to 5.5 inches. When you open it, you're basically getting a mini tablet experience. And this is where Apple could have a huge advantage. Software. Apple doesn't necessarily need to invent the foldable hardware category. Samsung, Huawei, Honor, Xiaomi, and others have already spent years doing that. Apple's challenge is making the foldable feel like a natural part of the iPhone and iPad ecosystem. Imagine opening the phone and instantly getting a larger workspace. Multitasking, video, editing, gaming, Safari, notes, and potentially completely new iOS interfaces designed around the larger display. Reports also suggest iOS 27 contains software support related to foldable functionality, including fold state detection and multitasking extensions. That's actually one of the more interesting pieces of this entire story. Touch ID, CAMERAS, and battery. But the Ultra isn't expected to simply be an iPhone 18 Pro that folds. There could be some compromises. Reports have suggested the foldable may use Touch ID instead of Face ID, potentially integrated into the power button. The rear camera system is also rumored to use two 48-megapixel cameras, rather than the triple camera system found on Apple's Pro models. So don't automatically assume. Foldable Ultra equals every Pro Max camera plus a folding display. It may actually be a different product philosophy. And one report puts the battery around 4,883 mAh, potentially split across the two halves of the device. That could be impressive for a foldable, especially considering the limited space inside a thin folding chassis. Problem: price. And now we have to talk about the elephant in the room. The price. The iPhone Ultra is expected to be extremely expensive. Current reports and estimates generally put it somewhere around $2,000 to $2,500 or potentially even higher, depending on the configuration and source. That's a huge amount of money for a smartphone. And this could be Apple's biggest challenge, because Apple can create incredible hardware. But consumers still have to decide whether a foldable iPhone is worth potentially paying more than twice the price of a regular flagship. And Apple reportedly has another problem: supply. There are reports suggesting Apple could initially have limited availability for the foldable, with some markets potentially receiving it later because of supply constraints and pricing concerns. So even if Apple announces it next month, getting one might be another story. DOLORS and design. As for colors, one recent leak showed two possible finishes: silver and dark blue indigo. That would be a very small color lineup compared with some other iPhone models. But honestly, I think it makes sense. Apple may want the Ultra to feel more like a luxury product. The Pro models could also receive new finishes, although color rumors are much less certain than some of the hardware rumors. So if you're waiting for a crazy neon orange foldable, don't get your hopes up just yet. What about the standard iPhone 18? And finally, there's the standard iPhone 18. This is where Apple's strategy gets really interesting. Instead of launching alongside the Pro models, it's expected to arrive in spring 2027, alongside the next generation of Apple's more affordable models. And the latest iOS 27 beta reportedly references 6 unreleased iPhone models, giving us another interesting clue about Apple's broader roadmap. So Apple may be preparing a lineup that looks something like iPhone 18 Pro, iPhone 18 Pro Max, iPhone Ultra this fall, and then iPhone 18, iPhone 18e, iPhone Air 2 in spring 2027. That's a very different iPhone strategy. Final verdict. So what do I think? If these rumors are even partly accurate, the iPhone 18 Pro Max could be the safe choice. You get the familiar iPhone experience: a huge display, powerful performance, major camera improvements, and potentially much better battery life. But the iPhone Ultra, that's the interesting one. It could be Apple's attempt to completely redefine what an iPhone can be. A phone that opens into something much closer to a tablet. But there's a catch. It's probably going to be expensive. And first-generation foldable hardware always comes with questions about durability, weight, thickness, repairs, and long-term reliability. So personally, I wouldn't recommend buying it just because it's new. I'd wait to see real-world testing, because leaks can tell us what Apple might launch, but they can't tell us whether it's actually worth your money. And that's what we're going to find out.